Building on the knowledge that you've gained from the previous module, you're now going to be challenged with a series of exercises in writing Burp plugins in Java. So our first exercise involves the sample code for Custom Logger. Now before we get started, I just want to mention a couple of things about the IDE, or your Java Integrated Development Environment. Of course, the IDE can be anything that you like. The most popular types include Eclipse and NetBeans. You will see me using Eclipse, and the demos.zip file available contains Eclipse projects. Now, a couple of notes about the JDK JRE version. You have to be running 1.5 or higher. That's due to the annotations and generics used. There is support for Gradle if that is something that you're interested in. You would have to add it yourself inside of the Eclipse workspace. I actually don't use Gradle, but I know a lot of people do, so I just want to mention it here. And of course, you need to download those Burp interfaces from that particular button that's inside of the GUI, and I've shown that in previous modules. Now, this is the particular GitHub repo that you need to clone. This will give you the custom logger code, and of course, that's what we're going to be modifying for your exercise. Also, if you're new to Git, I have the introductory type URLs on this slide as well. Now, the purpose behind this custom logger is you will be adding a new tab to the Burp user interface, and there is a display of HTTP traffic on a log table. The Burp extender class in this particular sample code extends abstract table model, and it implements several of the interfaces that we've seen before, but also an additional one. So you've got the iBurp extender, of course, the iTab, that's your new tab, the iHTTP listener, and then you've got the iMessage editor controller. That's going to help you with the request and response details. Of course, looking inside of the register extender callbacks method, you will see the registration of the listener. There's also a lot of use of helper classes here to analyze the request and responses and to get details from them. And then you're going to see a huge swing thread that handles all of the GUI interaction. Also make note that there are two private classes that are declared in the Burp extender class. One is called table and the other is log entry. I want to point out the particular method for get column name because you'll see in just a moment your assignment is going to have you look at this more closely. Right now you have two case statements, case 0 and case 1. These are the two columns that are presently on the default custom logger. Also, I'm making note to you that there is a log entry. That's one of the private tables that we just mentioned. In that log entry, you have the tool that's shown that's being used, and then you have a helper that helps you to analyze the request. In this particular case, you're getting the URL from that message info. Please make note of that as you see your assignment coming up. There's a lot of good information that's available in your HTTP request, so I'm showing you here some of those methods available. So now let's get to your assignment. What I'd like for you to do is I want you to modify this extension code by first adding debug statements. This will really help you to troubleshoot through the code. Then I want you to actually modify the extension code by adding a new column. You're going to call this column method, and you're going to make all of the other code changes appropriate to add that new column and the information from the HTTP request to that table. Now when I say method here, I'm referring to the HTTP verb. Usually it's a get or a post. And then of course I'd like you to build that jar file and install the custom logger with your changes into Burp and go ahead and test it out. So hopefully you've paused this video, but now you're ready to go ahead and look at the answer key. In this answer key, I'm going to show you the lines of code that I've added to the source code to complete the assignment. We're going to build that jar. We're going to import that extender into Burp, and then we're going to run it against a live target application to see the result. This is the answer key for exercise 1. In this exercise, you were to modify the custom logger to have an additional column. Now, there were 3 things that you needed to do. 1 is to add debug statements. 2, add a new column that shows the actual HTTP verb that was used in a particular request. And finally, you were to load your new extension, interact with a web application, and see the changes that you made. So let's take a look at the changes. Inside of the burpextender.java, you of course should have imported the print writer so that you can add those debug statements in there. After the import, you should have made a declaration for a print writer object. Inside of the register extender callbacks, you needed to instantiate that print writer. I have a debug statement here just to let me know that debug statements are now enabled. So now let's talk about the second part of the assignment, which is you needed to add a new column to the custom logger table. As we look at the code here, we start getting into the swing thread. So this is the main thread for the table. So we really didn't need to make any actual changes in this portion of the code. So let's scroll down. And let's take a look at this process HTTP message. Now here you will notice that there's a log.add. So you've got a series of rows and you've got the log.add. Now what I did is for the assignment, I am using the helper class to analyze the request. From that request, I want to take a look at the method that was used in that particular message. So that's going to be the additional column that I'm adding to the table. It's going to show me the HTTP verb that was used in that particular HTTP request. So as we scroll down, another change that I made is for the get column count, I had to increment this from a 2 to a 3. Another change that I made is in the get column name, I added a case number 2, which is going to return the title of method. In the get value at, this is for the log entry, I added a case 2 and I'm returning log entry.method. And then finally, if you take a look at the private class log entry, I made another change here where I added the reference for the passed-in parameter of method, and I add that to the class instance of method. So those are all the source code changes that I did. Let's go ahead and build our jar. So with this command, I'm going to build my jar. And now inside of burp, I'm going to go ahead and add my new extension. I'm putting custom logger, and I called it mod just because I wanted to indicate that I did modify the original custom logger. Okay, and I can see my debug statement is shown here. And now when I go to the logger tab, I can see that I have an additional column created called method. The last step is to send some web traffic through this table so we can see that it works properly. I'm just going to refresh this page. And as you can see, now I am able to see the method that is being sent in each request.